right, let's get into another deep dive.
Yeah, let's do it.
Today we're looking at the life and crimes of Kaboni Savage,
Oh, yeah.
a Philadelphia drug kingpin. Really fascinating story.
Absolutely. This guy's story is
Yeah. And it's a case, I think, that,
a harrowing journey.
yeah, really highlights just how destructive the drug trade can be.
Yes, the drug trade and just the brutality of gang violence, really.
The violence, it's all there.
Yeah, and so what's so interesting about this deep dive in particular is we're not just looking at a single crime.
Right.
We're looking at, really, his entire career through this Wikipedia article about his life.
It's amazing they have so much information.
So we're going to trace his path from athlete
Wow, really?
to the criminal underworld and all the shocking acts that led to his conviction.
Yeah, and you know what's fascinating about this?
Yeah.
His story isn't unique. This is kind of a classic. I mean, crime figures throughout history have followed this trajectory.
Yeah, that's a good point. Seduced by power, ultimately consumed by their ambition. I think it makes you wonder about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Like, what allows these figures to thrive?
The systemic factors, yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's start at the beginning with Kaboni Savage. He wasn't always this figure of violence.
Right.
He actually began boxing at a young age,
Wow.
training at the Front Street Gym in North Philadelphia.
Hmm.
Even won his only professional bout.
So promising.
Hard to imagine this promising athlete would become this notorious drug lord.
Yeah, it's almost as if there was this fork in the road, and some event kind of set him on this darker path.
Yeah.
And I think one significant one was the death of his father from cancer when he was only 13.
That's young.
That kind of loss at such a young age can really create a void,
Right.
leaving young people vulnerable, searching for belonging and control.
That makes sense, and it seems like that void was filled by the drug trade.
Yeah.
Savage started dealing in Hunting Park, a North Philadelphia neighborhood, and quickly rose up the ranks.
Yeah, and this coincided with the crack epidemic ravaging cities all over America.
In the 80s and 90s?
Exactly, in the 80s and 90s. It was lucrative but incredibly dangerous.
Right.
And, those willing to use violence, like Savage,
Yeah.
they were the ones who rose to power.
And violence was a part of his story really early on.
From the beginning.
Yeah, he was even suspected of committing his first murder
Really?
as a young man in a case involving a guy named Kenneth Lassiter.
Wow, tell me about that.
Yeah, so the details of the case are pretty disturbing.
Okay.
A minor altercation, a car bump in a parking lot,
Oh, wow.
escalated into a fatal shooting.
Oh, gosh.
Savage was acquitted, though,
Really?
due to the death of the lead witness,
Oh, my goodness.
which really speaks volumes about the code of silence and the fear of retaliation.
It's a chilling example of how the pursuit of justice can be obstructed by just intimidation and violence.
Yeah, it's a pattern that we see
Throughout.
throughout his story. He built a huge drug network, distributing hundreds of kilos of cocaine throughout Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't afraid to use brutal tactics to protect his empire.
It's striking because he wasn't just targeting rival gangs or dealers.
Right.
It went beyond individual acts of violence. It was really anyone who crossed him or even those he just suspected of being disloyal.
Wow.
And that reign of terror had a huge impact on the community, instilling fear and eroding any sort of trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, a really brutal example of this is the murder of Carlton Brown,
Oh, right, Carlton Brown.
a rival drug dealer.
In broad daylight.
In broad daylight. It sent a really clear message, right? Defy him and you face deadly consequences.
Yeah.
This wasn't just about eliminating competition. This was about maintaining absolute control.
And even when he ended up in federal detention center in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
Savage's attempts to control and intimidate continued.
Really?
He was known to threaten witnesses and their families,
Oh, wow.
even going so far as to threaten the children of those who might testify against him.
Scott.
Really, a need for control extended beyond the bars of his cell.
Yeah, this brings up an interesting question, right, about the nature of power.
Yeah.
Because for someone like Savage, it wasn't enough to just have influence on the streets.
Right.
He needed to maintain that grip on power even behind bars.
Wow.
It's a deep-seated need for dominance, this belief that he's above the law and can dictate his own sort of twisted justice.
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
But even with this level of control, there was one tragedy that Savage couldn't prevent.
Okay.
A tragedy that struck close to home
Oh.
and would trigger his most horrific crime.
Okay.
And that was the death of his 9-year-old daughter,
Oh, my gosh.
Ciara Cece Savage.
So sad.
She was killed in a gang shooting in York, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Devastating blow for Savage, who, despite his ruthlessness, was really deeply affected by her death.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fathom the pain of losing a child, especially like that.
Yeah, especially in the world that he created.
In that world,
Yeah, you'd think this might be a turning point for him.
you'd hope so.
Yeah.
Sadly, it wasn't.
Yeah.
This tragedy didn't lead to any remorse or a change of heart.
Right.
Instead, it fueled a rage that would have horrific consequences and culminate in one of the most shocking acts of revenge in Philadelphia's history.
Yeah, let's talk about that act of revenge.
Right.
Because it's a pivotal point in this deep dive.
Yeah.
And reveals a lot about Kaboni Savage's mindset and the lengths he was willing to go to.
Okay.
It all centers around a man named Eugene Twin Coleman.
Oh, right.
So Eugene Twin Coleman, he was one of Savage's associates,
Right.
decided to turn informant and testify against him.
Wow. You can imagine how that went over.
I can only imagine.
Betrayal in that world,
Yeah.
a cardinal sin,
Especially for a guy like Savage.
especially for a guy like Savage.
Built his empire on loyalty and fear.
Couldn't ignore it.
Right.
Direct challenge.
A public humiliation.
Yeah.
So consumed by this rage and thirst for revenge.
Right.
Savage orders the firebombing of Coleman's mother's house.
This wasn't just about silencing a witness. This was about sending a message.
Right.
Brutal message.
That there would be retribution.
Any act of betrayal.
Yeah.
Swift and merciless.
And he didn't just target Coleman.
Right.
He targeted his family.
His whole family.
The details of that firebombing are just incredibly disturbing.
I can imagine.
Really a reminder of the just devastation that this kind of violence can inflict.
On families and communities.
Yeah, the fire just ripped through the house.
Horrible.
Took the lives of 6 people,
Oh my gosh.
4 children,
Oh my goodness.
and Coleman's mother.
So awful.
And what's even more disturbing
Yeah.
is Savage's reaction when he learns about the deaths.
What did he say?
He was recorded saying
Yeah.
they should stop off and get him some barbecue sauce. Pour it on them burnt bitches.
That is just chilling. Bone chilling.
It really is.
No remorse.
Yeah.
Depths of his depravity.
To orchestrate their deaths and then
Mock their suffering.
mock their suffering.
Dehumanize them further.
Yeah, and to bring this horrific plan to life.
Right.
It required a network of accomplices,
I imagine.
including Savage's own sister,
Really?
Hoida Kida Da Savage.
Wow. How does that even happen?
It's really a chilling example of how family loyalty can be twisted.
By ambition.
Yeah, by criminal ambition.
Wow.
She played a key role in the firebombing.
What did she do?
She recruited the hitman,
Oh, wow.
Lamont Lewis,
Okay.
and even showed him where the house was located.
Wow.
And then there's Robert B.J. Merritt Jr.,
Okay.
Lewis's cousin,
Yeah.
helped carry out the attack.
So they used gasoline,
Yeah.
turned the house into an inferno.
Just calculated and deliberate.
It's a dark reminder of the darkness in the human heart.
Yeah.
But thankfully,
Yeah.
Lamont Lewis ultimately cooperated with the authorities.
Yeah, he flipped,
He fled.
leading to the arrests and
Or-
prosecution
Would have Savage.
of those involved.
It's amazing how pivotal that can be.
Yeah, without that cooperation,
He might have gotten away with it.
it's possible
It really shows the importance of witness testimony.
in dismantling these criminal enterprises.
Yeah, and ensuring that justice is served.
So the trial itself was a major event.
Bet.
Jury selection began in September 2012,
Okay.
and Savage was convicted in May of 2013.
Took a while.
Yeah, but the evidence against him was overwhelming.
So what were the charges?
He was convicted on 17 charges,
17. Wow.
including 12 counts of murder in aid of racketeering.
Wow. So this wasn't just about the firebombing.
No.
This was years of criminal activity.
Drug trafficking,
Yeah.
witness intimidation, this reign of terror that spanned years.
And he received the death penalty.
Yeah, for those crimes, he received a sentence that really reflected just the gravity of his actions.
Yeah.
The death penalty.
Wow.
He was sentenced to death not once, but 13 times.
Oh, my goodness.
Once for witness intimidation,
Right.
and once for each of the 12 murders.
That's the first federal death sentence handed down in Philadelphia.
In modern history.
Modern history, wow.
Really underscored the court's understanding of the impact of his crimes.
Absolutely.
Not just on the individuals, but on the community as a whole.
Right. But even with this seemingly definitive conclusion,
Right.
the story takes an unexpected turn.
Yeah.
An unexpected turn.
In December 2024, President Biden commuted Savage's death sentence.
Really?
He will now serve a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
That ignited a firestorm of debate, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Because some people felt that even a man like Savage deserves a chance at rehabilitation,
Right.
while others felt that the commutation diminishes the suffering of the victims.
Undermines the justice system.
Yeah.
So it's a complex issue.
Yeah, it's not about taking sides.
Not about taking sides.
It's about understanding this case and exploring the questions that it raises.
Right. Yeah, so we're left with a lot to think about here.
Absolutely.
The commutation brings up these huge questions about justice and punishment, and whether someone who's done such awful things can ever really be redeemed.
Yeah, can people change?
Right. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's a question that philosophers and legal scholars have debated for centuries, right?
Yeah.
Is the purpose of punishment, retribution, deterrence, or rehabilitation?
Right.
Can someone who's done such terrible things ever atone for their sins?
Yeah.
Savage's case forces us to really think about these uncomfortable truths.
And it's not just about Savage himself.
Right.
We have to consider the victims, the family,
The community?
as a whole. Even with a life sentence, the
Yeah.
story doesn't really end.
No.
Those ripples of pain and trauma just continue to spread.
It's a reminder that the justice system, as important as it is,
Yeah.
it can't address those long-lasting effects of violent crime.
The healing process is ongoing.
For everyone involved.
Right. Let's talk about some of the other people involved in this case.
Right.
Like Savage's sister,
Right.
Kadada, who helped orchestrate the firebombing.
Yeah, she got a life sentence plus 10 years.
Plus 10 years.
Yeah.
And Robert Merritt Jr.,
Right. The hitman.
a hitman,
Yeah.
he also received a life sentence.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Really showing that the court understands that everyone involved in these crimes,
That's to be held accountable.
even if they didn't directly commit the murders.
Absolutely.
And then there's Lamont Lewis.
Oh, right. The hitman who turned informant.
Yeah.
I mean, his testimony was so important.
Absolutely.
He got 40 years
the minimum.
under his plea agreement.
Right.
But his case is interesting
Yeah.
because it really makes you think about redemption, right?
Yeah.
He participated in this horrible crime,
Right.
but his cooperation was so key to getting justice.
So can someone who's committed a terrible act ever redeem themselves?
It's a tough question.
There's no easy answer to that one.
Not at all.
So Kaboni Savage's story.
Yeah. It's more than just crime and punishment.
It really is.
It's about the human condition, you know?
Yeah.
Choices we make, the consequences.
The enduring power of hope, even in the face of all this darkness.
Yeah. It's a story that stays with you.
It does.
Makes you think about justice, morality, redemption.
So I hope everyone listening will consider this.
Yeah.
How does Kaboni Savage's story shape your views on crime and punishment?
On forgiveness.
On forgiveness and redemption?
Yeah.
What are the lessons that we can learn from this as people and as a society to prevent this from happening again?
To create a better future.
Yeah, those are questions worth thinking about.
Absolutely.
And I encourage you to keep looking into this case and what it all means.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.